On one Friday in June, 735 stores closed. More than 30,000 people lost their jobs. Almost nobody got severance. Nobody was charged. No law was broken. The stores were still making money. The company just owed $5 billion it had never borrowed. Somebody else borrowed it to buy the company. I am Archie. I keep the files nobody wants reopened. This one is stamped file number 8, Toys R Us. Inside, a shop built for children, a loan it never asked for, and 33,000 people who found out on a Thursday afternoon. Nobody in here has a conviction. Open it with me. In 1948, a 25-year-old named Charles Lazarus took over his father's bicycle shop. He did not sell bicycles, he sold cribs. America was having babies faster than ever, and he sold what they slept in. The baby walks now. What next? The answer opened in Maryland in 1957, a shop selling nothing but toys. He called it Toys R Us and turned the R backwards like a child would. The shop already had a mascot called Dr. G. Raff. In 1965, it was redrawn, and a store employee renamed him Jeffrey. Before Lazarus, toys were a season. He built a warehouse the size of a supermarket and kept it full in July. Retail called it a category killer. Carry so much of one thing, nobody else competes. Lazarus stepped down as chief executive in 1994 and left the board in 1998. Remember that year? 1998 was also the year the shop lost first place. Walmart took 17.4% of American toy sales. Toys R Us took 16.8%. Walmart never built a better toy store. It put toys beside the groceries and charged less. Then came Christmas 1999. Toys R Us sold toys online, and plenty of them arrived after Christmas. So in August 2000, it signed a 10-year deal with an online bookseller, Amazon. Toys R Us became the only seller of toys and baby products on Amazon's site, and paid $50 million a year for the privilege, plus a slice of every sale. They had just handed their entire online future to the company they would spend the next decade trying to outrun. That was one clock. A second had not started. By 2004, other sellers were listing toys on Amazon. On May 21st, Toys R Us sued. Exclusive was supposed to mean exclusive. While that case sat in court, the boardroom moved. In March 2005, Toys R Us agreed to be bought for $6.6 billion by KKR, Bain Capital, and Vornado Realty Trust. The deal closed that July. Stop here. Everything after this depends on one idea. Here is how a leveraged buyout works. Normally, you buy a company with your own money. A leveraged buyout flips that. The buyer puts up a small slice of cash, here about a fifth, and borrows the rest. Then comes the part that surprises people. The loan is not in the buyer's name. It goes on to the company being bought. Imagine buying a house with a mortgage, except the mortgage isn't yours. It's the house's. The house owes the bank every month, whether or not you ever come back. Now put a real number on it. The three firms put in $1.3 billion of their own. The other $5.3 billion arrived as debt, and it landed on Toys R Us. The shareholders were paid and left. The debt stayed. The company did not borrow it to build stores or fix a website. It never saw the money. It simply began owing it. The shop now owed $5 billion for the offense of being worth buying. All of it legal. Companies are bought this way every week. 8 months after the deal closed, the court ruled. Toys R Us won. The judge ended the Amazon partnership and gave them until June to move out. Amazon later paid $51 million to settle. They won, and winning meant this. A company with no real website, no parcel warehouse, and no software had to build all three from nothing against Amazon. That is when the money ran out. Not the sales, the money. Just paying the interest on the new debt cost $400 to $500 million a year. That is over $1 million a day before a single toy sold. Every one of those dollars was a dollar that did not become a website, a truck, or a repainted shop. Without that debt, analysts estimated, the company would have cleared $500 to $600 million a year. The shops made money. It went elsewhere. And interest was not the only cost. The fees were in the contract too. The owners charged an annual advisory fee, and according to the private equity stakeholder project, that agreement required no minimum number of hours from the advisors. Across 12 years, the three firms received roughly $460 million in fees and interest. Nobody hid that clause. It was drafted, signed, and enforceable. The uncomfortable part of this file is not what was hidden. It is what was disclosed. The honest version gets harder. American birth rates were falling. Toy sales shrank about 3% a year from 2012 to 2017. Children moved to screens. Walmart and Target cut prices. One Columbia Law School analysis argued the company died of disruption, not debt. Both can be true. The world changed, and the company had $400 million a year less to change with it. On September 18, 2017, Toys R Us filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The plan was still to survive, reorganize, shrink the debt, keep the shops, keep the people. Court filings put the debt at $5.3 billion. 12 years on, the pile had barely moved. In February 2018, the company ended a severance policy decades old. 2 weeks of pay for your first year, then a week every 2 years. It ended for everybody at once. On March 15th, it was official. Every store in the United States, roughly 735 of them, would close. More than 30,000 jobs in America, up to 33,000 worldwide. 7 days later, Charles Lazarus died at 94 of respiratory failure in a New York hospital. Nothing links the two events. He had not run the company since 1994. On June 29, 2018, the last shops closed. Now the number stops being a number. Giovanna De La Rosa had worked there 20 years. She left with nothing. In November 2019, she testified before Congress. From day one, she said, they started making all kinds of cuts that weren't needed. She had done something else first. The workers organized, United for Respect, and a campaign called Rise Up Retail. In October 2018, Senator Elizabeth Warren wrote to Vornado and 5 hedge funds. More than 30,000 Americans, she wrote, lost their jobs because of your decisions, and your contributions to a hardship fund are vital to begin to make them whole. The next month, KKR and Bain Capital each put $10 million into a hardship fund for the workers. $20 million in total. Vornado did not contribute. The workers had asked for $75 million, what the old policy would have paid. They got 27 cents on the dollar, a real achievement and a very small number. North of the border, the same brand survived. It went through its own restructuring and came out the other side without the American buyout debt. Fairfax Financial bought it in 2018 and later sold it on. It still trades, about 80 stores, 4,000 staff. Same giraffe, same decade, different balance sheet. The checks went out in early 2019, from $200 to more than $12,000. One former employee received $735. In March 2020, the creditors' trust sued the former chief executive and directors connected to the three firms, alleging breaches of duty over bonuses and fees paid before the filing. In October 2022, Judge Keith Phillips approved a sealed settlement. The terms were never published. He found them fair. No court has ever ruled that anyone in this file did anything wrong. The three firms lost the $1.3 billion they put in. They had also collected roughly $460 million on the way down. Both are true. The brand came back twice. A hedge fund version failed by January 2021. WHP Global then bought the name and stopped running shops. Today it is a licensed corner in somebody else's store. Here is the lesson from file number 8. Nobody was charged. The debt was disclosed. The fees were in the contract. Every step was legal. And 30,000 people still walked out with no severance. Falling birth rates would have hurt this shop anyway. The debt is why it could not fight back. Legal is a flaw, not a promise. A company can be healthy at the till and dead on the loan schedule. And only one of those numbers gets read aloud. Close the file. Somewhere tonight a deal is closing and the company being bought is signing for the loan. I'll keep the light on.